Hey there! Welcome to my PowerPoint presentation on defensive tools in Flesh and Blood. How to not die. This video is a counterpart of sorts to my evasion video. If you haven't watched it yet, make sure to check it out. The link is in the description. Where evasion is how you get damage through to your opponent, this video is about the tools you have in your main deck to stop your opponent from hitting you. These tools come in three main flavors: defense reactions, damage prevention, including ward, and block cards. Each of these tools have their own ups and downs, as well as specific hate for each. The first tool I'm going to talk about is the not-so-humble defense reaction. Defense reactions are so powerful that they're not only played in defensive or mid-range decks, but will even see play in aggro decks to take advantage of how much tempo they can gain. The most ubiquitous of the D-reacts are the generic 0 for 4 D-reacts: Sink Below, Fate Foreseen, and Shelter from the Storm. At their base, these D-reacts allow you to stall the tempo your opponent attempted to gain with the breakpoint they threw at you, meeting your opponent's 0 for 4 with your own. If that was all these cards did, that alone would justify their inclusion in many decks. However, almost all D-reacts have some additional effect that benefits the person playing it. Sometimes it's extra defensive value based on a condition being met. Sometimes it's reducing the cost of the card. And sometimes it's even offensive value. This extra value means that defense reactions always have a place in a deck strategy, no matter how aggressive. On top of all of the value defense reactions get you, they're also reactions. Because they can be played at reaction speed, they offer you a lot more flexibility in how you block. You can wait to see how your opponent reacts before you fully commit to blocking an attack. Finally, because defense reactions are played and not simply blocked with, you can store defense reactions in the arsenal. This opens heroes up to 5-card defensive hands, or the ability to store defensive value for a crucial turn. All of the value gained from the extra effects of defense reactions, plus blocking your opponent's breakpoints, plus the flexibility in how you block, make defense reactions a ubiquitous and powerful part of the game. So how do you conquer defense reactions? There are a lot of cards which have the text, "Defense reactions cannot be played to this chain link." The most famous of these is Command and Conquer, which not only prevents defense reactions from being played, but also threatens the arsenal where they often sit. Command and Conquer is so iconic that it has gotten a number of retrains. Another well-known card that combats defense reactions is Dreadbore. Its static effect, "Defense reactions cannot be played from hand to this chain link," is so strong that it can single-handedly win the game against the defensive decks that try to stop the Intrepid Ranger. Because most of the powerful defense reactions are red, it's entirely possible to strand 2 cards into defensive deck's hand for multiple turns, leaking damage all the while. Additionally, when paired with the buff Release the Tension, it's a build your own, no defense reactions attack. The other way to beat defense reactions is not to prevent them from being played, but instead to add cost to them. Cards like Authority of Ataya or Channel Lake Frigid completely ruin the efficiency of defense reactions, and buy massive value. Finally, if you really hate defense reactions, just send Arcane Damage. If you don't send an attack action, your opponent can't use defense reactions. Shout out to Emboldened Blade for calling out defense reactions. I'm actually switching up my ad read for once. It's still about Majestic Arena, since it's still my LGS and he's still supporting our local community with an incredible place to play. So don't worry. But he's at least responded to me and confirmed it's me he believes in. Now that he's confirmed his belief in me, it's safe to check him out at Transient TCG on Discord or TCG Player, or soonly enough at MajesticArena.com. It'll also show belief in what I'm doing. Link's still in the description. The next type of defensive tool is damage prevention. Prevention appears in 2 forms: single use and floating. Single use prevention, found from things like ward and no fear, are consumed when any amount of damage would be dealt. If you put 4 prevention on attack dealing 1 damage, the whole of the 4 prevention will be consumed to prevent that single point of damage. In fact, sending a bunch of small attacks is the way to beat a large amount of single-use damage prevention. However, with floating damage prevention, instances of damage less than the total floating prevention will only consume prevention equal to the damage being dealt. Using the same 1 power attack, if you have 4 floating prevention, the 1 power attack will only consume 1 point of prevention instead of all 4. Floating prevention is decidedly harder to find than single-use prevention due to this power. The way to tell floating apart from single use is the wording. floating prevention uses the phrasing, prevent the next X damage that would be dealt. Whereas non-floating prevention says if you would be dealt damage or the next time you would be dealt damage. One of the key differences between defense reactions and damage prevention is that defense reactions cannot prevent arcane damage, while damage prevention can. Additionally, damage prevention can stop things like flick knives or reckless swing, where defense reactions usually cannot. While LSS has never confirmed this, I suspect that most prevention cards have weaker effects than defense reactions because they can stop so much more than defense reactions can. And yes, I know about the power of illusionists, but an individual ward card is usually weaker than an individual defense reaction. Illusionist abilities and weapons are usually what push them over the edge. So how do you target damage prevention? As of right now, there are exactly 13 cards that pierce damage prevention, and 4 of them belong to Warrior. I hope that tells you how important piercing damage prevention is to the class. For prevention-based decks, cards that say damage cannot be prevented require saving cards with actual defense value to protect their board filled with prevention. This is because all available single-use prevention will attempt to apply itself to the instance of damage that cannot be prevented, and all of the prevention will be consumed. This allows that single instance of damage to slice through all of the prevention in one fell swoop. In fact, the sheer threat of piercing damage prevention will often encourage people to let their prevention go early instead of protecting it. However, an important interaction is with floating prevention, and damage cannot be prevented. In the instance that you have floating prevention and damage cannot be prevented, the floating prevention will be completely ignored and simply save itself for the next instance of damage that can be prevented. The only other way to beat damage prevention is to simply overwhelm it. For decks which focus on a single large strike, this might be too much to ask. However, decks that go low and wide can usually get past the defenses of prevention decks and beat them to the ground. For this reason, Tiger Stripe Shuko is kind of funny to me. Ninja is already good against prevention-based decks, so adding the damage cannot be prevented clause to Shuko seems a little overkill. I don't play Ninja though, so I could be wrong. I wrote a little bit about designer's inspiration. Feel free to pause the video and give it a read if you like. The final defensive tool to talk about is block cards. Block cards are the newest addition to the game of these tools, and also the most limited. On their base, block cards can only be blocked with from hand or pitched, so they're sort of the worst combination of defense reactions and normal actions. To combat this, block cards often have very impactful or unique effects. Just like defense reacts, block cards are often included because they provide the ability to block a breakpoint with one card. But due to the downside of not being able to arsenal them or deploy them at reaction speed, the effect of the block card also needs to be impactful, at least in CC. Despite the block card needing to play a very specific role, when they are included in a deck, they often provide a very powerful glue to hold the deck together. Personally, if I'm registering a block card, I'm almost always happy to draw it. So how do you beat the powerful effects granted by block cards? Honestly, they kinda beat themselves. Often, block cards have conditional effects, so if you don't activate their conditions, they simply block and provide no other value. Additionally, if your opponent draws multiple block cards in a hand, those cards by themselves cannot provide any offensive value, and can clunk up your opponent's hands. Many a Guardian player has been stuck with 2 red block cards in hand, doing absolutely nothing when they have tempo, and they have to hope the other 2 cards in their hand are useful. Finally, just like with defense reactions, if you're sending Arcane, most of the block cards are only as good as their pitch value, which is often 1. I think it'd be really funny if LSS printed a throw, which said block cards cannot defend it. In conclusion, defensive cards are strong, and you should absolutely play them. It's kind of funny to show up with a wizard and watch your opponent pitch their defense reactions because you haven't registered an attack action. Yes, fun is sometimes zero-sum, and yes, I intend to have all of it. Good fun and have luck in your next game.